Hello, my name is Mary Miele. Today we are talking about stimulus overload. And as we're talking, I'm doing all the things. I'm just on a couple of screens. I've got my phone going. I'm trying to listen to a Zoom. I've got all of these lovely sounds happening. And many of my students are trying to learn around all of this. And I want to really talk today to the teenagers. So if you have one, go grab your teenager and sit down and give yourself some uninterrupted screen time to listen to this presentation, because I think it will help you so very much. So I'm going to go ahead and take my phone and put it down, and I'm going to be here with you right now, only you. So go ahead, just again, take all of the time you need, take a pause. Everything else goes away, and we're just going to give ourselves a few minutes to be together to learn what is happening and why we are so kind of stuck in this way of learning and working. Okay. All right. What is happening in your brain when you hear the bing? That's a stimulus. That's what that noise is called. Your brain hears it through your ears, and it goes to a receptor. A receptor is a cell in the brain where that information comes in. It processes what is this information, and it's going to pass that signal on to another part of the brain where it will be received, and your reaction will then happen. So just in and of itself, when you have the ding, stimulus, receptor sends to another receptor, and a reaction happens. So just by having that distraction, your brain has to give all of this energy to that distraction. So even if you think I'm studying for my test and I'm really in here and I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing and my notification goes off, bing, this happens. And so it absolutely 100% interferes with your ability to remain in the zone with the work you are doing, because your brain gets a stimulus and it's dealing with it. There is energy and attention given to that stimulus in your environment. This is a human brain we're talking about, and that is the way the human brain is working. Are we clear? Okay. Now, hormones release. Now, I'm not talking about the hormones you don't want to be talking about with your mom and dad or whoever is sitting with you right now. I'm talking about a couple of other hormones that we're going to get into in a minute, but this is important because a little bit of the reason that you continue to do a lot of this has to do with the hormones that are released, and some of it is a really nice part about it, and others are not so nice. So I want you just to learn. I just want you to be aware, and we'll talk about that. And then there's some autopiloting that occurs. So if we do this enough, just like anything, if we think something enough, if we do something enough, we become routinized that way. It just is sort of the way we think about something. Okay. And there are side effects that then happen as a result, which we can all understand. And I'll teach this part to you in a little more detail in a second. But there could be burnout. You might be feeling really tired of doing work on your computer. You might just feel this is just unpleasant and I don't want to do it. You could be feeling a heightened sense of anxiety. Anxiety is a feeling. It's a normal feeling until it's not, until it becomes involved in stopping you from functioning well. But it's a feeling of concern, of worry, and that is something that could happen as a result of what you're dealing with. You could become addicted to this process, as in addicted to being on technology and having notifications open and having many windows open and pages and flying from one thing to the next. It could be an addictive situation that you're going to have to deal with. And it could also lead you into avoiding or not paying attention to the emotions that you're having in your life. And so your emotional EQ may decrease over time. You may not be aware of what your feelings are. Okay. So we just want to now go through this and understand some of this just a little more depth, okay? So if you need to stay here and process for a couple minutes, just really understand what I was just saying, go ahead and do that. Let your brain sink this in, and then we're going to go to the next part. So if we have an alert, if we have 100 windows, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but a lot of us do have a lot of windows open. We have music playing, we're switching from one page to the next, and we're working right this way. Okay, this is what's happening. Each time we are switching from one page to the next, new visual stimuli. Bing, new stimuli. Each time something like this happens, we have a receptor going to another receptor and releasing emotions or responses to what we're dealing with. So we could be releasing feelings, we could be releasing hormones, we could be releasing or creating some neural pathways. Now it becomes easier. Every time I get a ding, I might start to feel anxious because maybe that's what I typically feel when I'm going in there. Maybe I start to feel excited, happy, keeps going, right? So just be aware, this is the way the brain works, and it's important for you to realize and be aware. Okay, there's some hidden issues. Most kids don't realize the highway that they're on when they have the texts flying in while they're doing work. We're just going to look at text, but this is the same thing that happens when you're looking at many different windows or things like that, where you have lots of stimuli flying at you while you're trying to do schoolwork. Okay. Let's examine what is happening when you get a text and you're doing a work on a writing paper. Let's just say you're writing a paper and you get bing, a text comes in. Okay. So this is the bing. It goes to the receptor. It sends a signal to open me. That's what I want you to do. So you're going to go ahead and open the message. You're going to read it. It's a lot of stimulus now. We're going back and forth a lot in the brain when we're reading. Okay. Lots of receptor efforts are going on there. You're not thinking about your paper anymore. Now you're thinking about this. Remember, your brain can do one thing at a time, one attention at a time. Okay. Emotional reaction is created. Yay, I got attention. Somebody really important texts me, or, oh no, I got really bad news. This kid is not enjoying what I sent them, or somebody is upset with me, or there's drama going on. There's gossip. Oh my goodness, I have to start worrying. So there's some kind of emotional response to the communication that we're getting. 100%. You may not be aware of it, but it's there, and we need to start becoming aware of it. So what are we experiencing when we get these messages? What's that feeling? Develop that EQ for yourself. What is the feeling's name that you're getting? Okay. Now, hormones are released. Hormones are reactions to certain feelings or stimulus, and dopamine is a big one. So dopamine is the reward transmitter. So this is true. When we get a message, somebody's paying attention to us and we feel good about that. We feel happy to get the message. We have attention. Humans like attention typically. So it's a very helpful piece of our brain getting this dopamine. It starts to make us feel good. So now going forward, it's going to be hard for us to resist opening that bing, because our brain is now used to that dopamine. It's used to having that dopamine when we are learning. When we're doing our schoolwork, we're used to those floods of dopamine, right? So if you want to stop doing the text messages while you're working, you're going to have to be aware that it's going to be hard initially, because now you're doing it without some of that dopamine. This is something that is really important for you to understand. Did you hear what I just said? So what did I say? I said, if you want to stop listening to your text messages while you're working, you're going to have to be okay with working initially. You're not going to have that rush of dopamine hitting you every time your text messages are going off, right? You're going to have to work without it, which might make you feel a little bummed and a little sad, which is why most kids don't do it. Most kids don't stop the text messaging because it's really nice to have all that all that lovely hormone coming in, right? So but you can, and you can replace it. The dopamine can actually come in different ways. In fact, dopamine can come if you just literally think about something really happy, or you remember yourself in your last vacation that you took that you had such a great time with, or you remember being with your crush and you're just so happy and flooded with dopamine, right? So these are just other ways you can get dopamine happening, but you need to replace it, and there's going to be a transitional period. So that doesn't mean, like, if you let go of your text messaging, doesn't mean you're going to never feel joy while you're doing your work again. It just means you've been getting it somewhere else, and now you have to find it within your work. Got it? That's your new puzzle, which is kind of fun, actually. You get to figure out how else you can give your brain some of these helpful hormones. So cortisol is a stress hormone. Now, stress is typically thought of as not good. We don't want to have stress. Usually that's what everyone says, but cortisol can be helpful. I was just talking with a student the other day about this, and I said to them, listen, when you procrastinate, you get a lot of cortisol running in your brain. You're like, oh my God, I have to get this done. This is really stressful. And what happens is you get a heightened sense of energy. You don't have to even eat. You just get a lot of energy. You get to focus a little bit more because you have that hormone really helping you focus, and it decreases your pain tolerance, or the pain that you experience is less. So you can get through something that's not so pleasant because you are procrastinating. So of course you would continue to procrastinate unless you figure out a different way to give yourself some of this input. It's tricky. It's so hidden, right? It's so hidden. And now that you're educated, by the way, you get to decide what you're going to do here, but you have to learn first. That's the key, right? That's why we're here today. That's why you're listening to this. Okay. So now you're going to go and you're going to maybe even feel some serotonin, and serotonin is going to be that hormone that makes you feel valued. Ooh, somebody texted me. I'm important. I'm so important. Somebody thought of me. Right? So endorphins are another one that comes in. So a lot of people get endorphins when you exercise and you run. You might start to feel really good and happy. And endorphins also come when we get a text, or also if we're working on something really boring and then we go to another window where something is really exciting. It helps us just get a little bit of that endorphin piece, so we can have that feeling going on inside of us. Okay, so just good to know these hormones, because you can find other more healthy ways that work for you to get them. And you can also stop doing the behaviors that are causing you to work in ways that are more painful than they need to be. That's the whole point, right? Okay, so let's keep going. So we have this chemical reaction, which becomes now Pavlovian, which, remember, I don't know if you studied any of this in psychology yet, but it has to do with an experiment that someone did who is named Pavlov, and he basically studied these dogs and if they would become able to produce saliva just on the sight of some kind of food as opposed to actually eating the food. So he trained their response by continuing to show them the stimuli and eliciting that response. So it's like a trained, they don't even need to eat the food to, or see the food to be able to produce the response. And in fact, now it's all coming back to me. They actually got rid of the meat, and there was a sound. He actually just, played a sound of some kind, and that sound produced the saliva. So without the even meat around, the sound produced the saliva. So just remember, when you hear the ding, you don't even need to open the message. The hormones are flooding into you because it becomes Pavlovian, right? So it's like, I'm already feeling good. I'm already feeling cortisol. I'm already having all of these different kinds of reactions. I didn't even open the message yet, right? And so this is what's happening, is that you're training your brain to have these emotions and these reactions. And what I want you to do is I want you to start being aware. Just be aware. That's your first step. Just be aware of what's happening coming into your brain when you're having these distractions, because you will change your behaviors with that knowledge. soon enough, as I just already said, not as eloquently as I did here when I wrote this, is that no matter what comes in, your body's going to respond with those same feelings. And so you might just continue to exist every time you do your work. You might have some anxiety, which we know, by the way, is a condition that can take away your brain power to do work. If you have anxiety, you may not have use of all of your brain because your brain is in a stressful state and it's not able to access your thinking, because in the human brain, remember, we're like fight or flight. We're trying to survive. Our old human existence, we all tried to survive, and the anxiety would just help us focus just on surviving and not this higher order thinking and papers and lab reports and all the things that students do right now, right? Yeah. Okay. So carrying on. So now there's some end results that you want to watch for, right? We want to watch for the addiction. Can you do your work without your notifications on? Can you? FMO, can you, is there a fear of missing out happening? Are you worried? I have to go look. I can't work without music. I can't work without my other tabs open. If there's a feeling of that, you might want to check yourself, because that might mean that you have formed some kind of addiction to this kind of stimulus that you're going to have to unpack and undo, right? You might be feeling really burnt out. Sorry for my typo here. I just realized, as I was probably also distracted in this moment, but you can see the burnout. I can't do work on my computer. It's so exhausting. Yeah, no wonder it's exhausting. You're sending your brain into all these different areas. You're flooding your body with a ton of hormones. Your behavior is contributing to all that you're then fighting, and you're exhausted. Of course you are. You don't want to do it anymore. I don't blame you. It's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. And if there's this feeling of, I've got to be on this device, again, we talked a little bit about that before, the addiction. And the other thing that can really happen is that you might have certain emotions that you're not really feeling. You're not paying attention to them. You're not present with them. You don't know what the names of them are. You don't really know how to identify when they're happening to you. And so it's lowering your emotional intelligence, your emotional understanding. And so you don't even maybe realize what you're actually experiencing, because you're in a state of constantly being flooded with the stimulus response, instead of stopping and taking a look at what's happening in your brain from an outside perspective. That's metacognition. So metacognition means thinking about your thinking. So are you able to take yourself out of your brain a little bit and look at what's happening in your brain? This is something that in child development happens as you are a teenager. So it is something that you can do if you are a teenager typically. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So now, how do you change? You understand now what's happening to the brain. You understand why you have all of these notifications happening and the 10 different windows and all of the different ways of being distracted when you're trying to work. And so the first step is to become aware. And again, what I want to just preface as I get into this, how to change, is that I'm a learning specialist, a certified special education teacher. And the way I understand the brain is not in the same capacity as a psychoanalyst, a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist. There's no methodology that's of the medical kind that I am talking about here. I'm going to be very clear. What I am talking about here is the learning process and the way in which you act as a student and how you can change those behaviors so that you can have a different experience within your learning. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm very confident and comfortable talking in that particular wheelhouse. So if you could just walk through this with me, see if it's a fit for you, it will be important for you to assess that for yourself and for your family to help you with that part. But the first part is to have awareness of what is happening for you. Are you distracted when you are doing your work, and how are you distracted? This is the first step that we often do in our coaching. We start here. The next is we then target specific behaviors that we're going to go ahead and change. And you're going to need support to do this because it's biology, folks. Your brain has been conditioned, like it or not, to work in one way. Now we're asking you to change your behavior and work in a different way. And you're going to feel it differently. And you need support to understand how you're going to go ahead and do that. It's not so simple. I mean, sometimes it is simple for some kids. They'll just say, okay, forget it. I don't care how hard it is. I'm done with that and I'm doing this. Sometimes that happens. But for the most part, you need a little bit more of that hand holding through one behavior. We just do one thing at a time. And once you get confidence with being able to do that one, often you can follow suit and see how you want to do any others that you don't prefer to have, right? So just remember also, do what you want to create, not what you don't. So if you want to create a brain that has full capacity to focus on what you have to do in the most efficient way and reserve your other brain power for other scenarios, if you want to decrease the control that the hormones have over you, right, and get your control back, then you'll act in a certain way. So you have to be ready for this work. Like if you're not in a place where you're going to see your free will, like you get to decide, like you teenager need to be in that driver's seat to change, because it's your brain and it's your body and it's your work and your learning. And so it's not going to change because your parents say it needs to change. That's one part of it, but you're going to need to do the work to do the changing, and you get to decide what you do, right? You get to decide if your notifications are on. You get to decide if you're looking at 10 different pages. You get to decide if the hormones are coming in or not. And you have total free will over all of this. So I leave you there. And if you would like to have coaching, this is something that I do, that my group does, and you can apply to become our client. If not, I hope that you found this so helpful, and I hope that you come back and continue to learn with us. Have a great distraction-free day. Good for you. You made it through. First step right here. If you were able to read and watch that whole entire presentation. Oh, look, a notification right as I end. How interesting. All right, I will stop this recording. See you all soon.